Hey everybody. So this is the UV demo that I had talked about earlier. So basically what I'm going to do is just do a refresher. I'm not sure how much UV training you guys have had in the past. So I just wanted to go through a few objects and just show my kind of general process for a few different types of objects. So we'll get started. So we've got three objects. This is kind of like I don't know, a bicycle seat, or it could be like a gauntlet on a forearm or something. This is more of a cylindrical object with some overlapping geo around the different surfaces, and then more of a kind of a complex object. And for all of these, I'm just going to grab them all and just go to UVs and delete. So we're starting from scratch. And I'm going to isolate these. So I'm going to start with this one. So hit Control 1, and that'll isolate the object, and we'll get started. So typically when I'm looking at an object, I want to get the big surfaces down first. So some other kind of, I'm going to show you lots of like little tips and tricks here. And sorry for the screen space. I'm trying to do this all on one screen. So under Modeling Toolkit, we have these selection constraints, which can be really useful UVing. So if I just type angle and 45 degrees, and go over my object and hit face, you can see it's going to start selecting these by angle. So especially things like these end caps, you can grab them really easily with this selection constraint. So to start off, I'm going to go ahead and do this big piece here. So another thing that I do a lot of times is if you hold shift and then the greater less than signs, this will expand and contract your selection. So I'm just going to expand that. Whoops. And then add these. And of course, as usual in Maya and 3D, there's all kinds of ways you can do the same tasks. I'm just going to show you how I do it. So I've got all these top faces selected. So I'm going to go up here to my UV, and I'm going to do camera based, and that'll give me this shell here. So I'm just going to UV shell and then just move it out of the way. And then I'm going to grab the side, these faces, like so, and then just do the same thing, UV camera based, move those out of the way, and then I'm going to go right click UV shell, grab all of these, and then I want to grab this set of polys at the bottom, so I'm just going to do select, inverse, and then it's going to grab these ones at the bottom, and then I'm just going to do UV camera based, and I'll get these bottom ones. So now that I've got all of all the geometry now has UV coordinates. I'm just going to move this over a little bit just so we can see more. So we've got these four UV shells, and we can see that the UVs are overlapping, which we don't want. There's some really easy tools inside of Maya that we can use. So this is your UV toolkit. If you don't see it, it's under UV and then editor, and then under editor, I think it's in here. Modify tools, yeah, under tools, hide UV toolkit. It'll say show UV toolkit if you don't have it selected or you don't have it visible. So I'm just going to hit unfold, and there we go. Very easy to do. I'm going to turn on this little checkerboard pattern. And what that'll do is allow us to see the UV pattern in the viewport. We can turn off the checker pattern inside of the UV editor by hitting this button, because it can get a little annoying. It's hard to see what you're doing. So we can see this looks pretty good. There's a little bit of distortion coming down off the sides, but nothing that would be that you'd have to worry about. Like, this is totally fine as a UV pattern. So now that I've got that one, I'm just going to move it out of the way, grab this other one, unfold that, move it out of the way. These don't have to be unfolded. They're pretty much spot on, as you can see. So the idea with UVs is you basically want the same checker pattern everywhere, right? So like right now you can see these checkers are a little bit bigger than these. Um, so that's it's what we call texel density. So I'm going to scale these down until they're about the same size as the rest of the UVs. So we can kind of just move these over here, grab these, scale them up and down. Just put these down here. And then we want to kind of try to fill up the UV space as much as we can. So you can see these are still a little bit too small. So we can scale them up a little bit, or down, rather. And move these over. And there we go. That object is UV'd. It's as simple as that. Um, I think a lot of students and people that are just learning don't think about doing multiple projections, doing like a selection of polygons and then doing a projection. They try to do it in one projection for the whole piece, which makes things much, much more complicated. All right, so this piece is done. Let's go ahead and look at something like this. So for something like this, all I would do typically is grab all the faces that are cylindrical that aren't overlapping. Like there's no overhangs, right? So I'm just going to grab all of those, and I think I've got them all. And then I'm going to do a UV cylindrical projection, and that'll give me this. And then what I can do, I can turn on my selection constraint here. So I'll turn this on, and then it'll give me 45-degree angles. So now I'm just going to go through and grab all of those surfaces that are planar, and then I'm just going to put my camera here, and then I'm just going to do a camera based. And then that'll give me a bunch of UV shells down here. So before I start doing the unfolding, which I may not even have to do for these, I'm going to grab all of these shells and then go down here to arrange and layout and just hit layout. And that'll give me a general layout of my UVs of each shell. And you can see with just those simple projections, this is UV mapped and ready to go. We don't even have to go and mess around with texel density or anything. So it's very simple, as I said, whereas if I just grabbed this object and then just did one projection and just did a cylindrical, you're going to see we get all kinds of issues in these planar surfaces, which we don't want. So there's that one. And we'll move on to the last one here, this guy. So this one is the same thing, or the same process is used. It's just multiple selections. So I can go in here, grab these different pieces, and I'm just looking at pieces that I think that I can project through. Go into my camera or UV, camera based, layout, and sometimes I'll just do layouts. We'll hit the layout button just to make things quicker. So for something like this, for something like this geometry may not be totally welded. So let's just take a look. If I double click, yeah. So if I double click on a geometry, it's going to select all the pieces of that geometry, which is totally fine. Then we can isolate those and look at them. So I can say, okay, these faces here, like so. And I'm not going to go through all of this object, obviously, because it's much more complicated. So if I see like I've got this overhang here, I can turn on my selection and then just deselect that overhang on both the top and the bottom, like so. Probably these as well, the sides. Oops. Oh, grab that. Turn off our angle. Grab those, and then I'm going to do UV camera based. That's going to give me this piece. And then I would just keep going throughout this piece. On stuff like this, you're going to see a lot of this is kind of connected. So you'd have to go through and do little cuts and stuff just to get these things projected correctly. But the same principle. So really, at its core, it's selecting faces, projecting, selecting faces, projecting, selecting faces, projecting. Just repeating that process over and over again, and making sure that your UV shells match in textile density. So for something like this, you can see I need a little bit more, so I can go like that. So one problem you may run into is if you're trying to get all of your objects into this 0 to 1 space, it could be a problem, right? So if like for an object like this, I may not be able to fit this whole thing and have the proper textile resolution for it. So that's when we start doing things like multiple UDIMs, which each one of these tiles, it's also called a multi-tile approach. So if you find yourself running out of resolution in your model, so like say for instance, I want to UV this piece up here. So I'm just going to do it automatic just for demonstration. So then now I can go and put it in this tile, and like say this bottom piece, I can do UV automatic, and now I'm going to be in this tile. So you can see from our textile resolution, these are all kind of similar in resolution. But if I try to grab all of these UV shells, and then I just lay them out in 0 to 1, see the difference in the checker pattern. So I'll do it again so we can see this level of detail versus this. So it'll depend like on your objects, right? So if this is a background object that you don't really care about, maybe 0 to 1 tile is totally fine. But if it's a hero object, you may want to use all of these spaces for your texture. So there's one caveat to this. If you're using multi-UDIMs, there's some setup you have to do in Unreal to get it to work. Other programs like Houdini and Maya will pick up UDIMs natively. But the thing to remember is each one of these tiles generates texture maps, right? So if you have a normal map, a diffuse map, maybe a height map, and a roughness map, that's 4 or 5 maps for this one tile. So if for some reason you need to use 10 of these tiles, that's 40 maps. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it can get a little bit daunting to wrangle all those textures, and then depending on the size of the textures, it can get kind of slow in your texture software and in the render engine. So that's a quick overview on UVs, a little kind of refresher. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.